now filming in a new location, which means no cat and no dog. It's an apartment. I don't share any walls, but I share a ceiling. And I don't know if the people upstairs can hear me talking to myself. So I'm gonna talk a little quietly, at least to begin with, because I'm a little nervous about being judged. If you hear like watery noises, it's my humidifier that I turned off. You might be able to hear the other one buzzing in the other room, but I have one right here and it's super loud, so I turned it off for this video, but it's still like drip dropping. So I figured that, you know, I made a video about like what my experience was like freshman year at Cornell and like Cornell specific tips and advice, because I feel like a lot of the freshman advice out there is the same, but you know, I thought something more targeted specifically to Cornell would be useful for, you know, incoming students. But now classes start in 2 days as of when I'm filming this. I figured that another good video to make would be to like take another step backwards and talk about what I did in high school to get into Cornell. Basically, how I got into Cornell is the catchy title. I'm going to talk about like my college search generally and then sort of go by subject. But yeah, so my college search process was like a little bit weird because basically like I didn't do much research on schools in general. I just sort of like went to a few college fairs and then I got in the car with my mom and we went and visited like 17, I think it was, something like that, schools, and just toured them, visited them, and then from that group I then applied to 10 and then I got into like 6 or something, I don't know. My college counselor in high school basically started like recommending schools for me based on like my academics and also just like what she wanted. And so she recommended a bunch of schools that I didn't feel like they would be like challenging for me. I wanted to like, you know, shoot high personally. Because I went to a Catholic school, my college counselor also recommended a bunch of religious schools, and that was something that I like really wanted to get away from. So I think I applied to one school that had a religious affiliation, and that was Georgetown. But other than that, I was like staying far away from religious schools because I've had enough of that. But yeah, I ended up visiting about between 15 and 20 schools in person, and one of them was Cornell. And from those schools that I visited, I applied to 10, and then my like application pool, like the schools that I applied to, included like a few safe schools that I like was pretty confident that I would get into. My high school used a website, I don't remember what it was called, but it had like this feature on it where it loaded the GPA and then SAT score of like everyone from my high school who had applied to that school before and then whether they got in or not. So basically you could see yourself plotted, like your GPA and SAT scores. You were plotted on like a scatter chart thing along with all the other people who had applied to that school. And if you were in like the range of people who had gotten accepted, then you were probably going to get accepted to that school. And then if you were in the range of people who didn't get accepted, you probably wouldn't get accepted. So that was sort of how I rated like whether something was a safe school for me or not. It was basically if I was like firmly in the accepted range on that chart on that website, I considered it a safe school for me. And then if I was kind of borderline, then I counted it as sort of like a long shot school. And so I had a few that were safer and then a bunch of like schools that were more selective and harder to get into. I wanted to be able to, you know, have the best chance possible of getting into at least one of the like more selective schools. After I applied, I visited the schools again that accepted me on their like accepted students day, and then I finally made my decision at the end of April because you have to make the decision before or on May 1st. So now I'm going to talk about like what I did in high school and what I did like on my application to get into Cornell. So first, academics. From freshman to senior year, I took all the honors and AP classes that I could that were offered at my high school. We didn't have as many APs as other schools, and also like while I was there we didn't have dual enrollment, we didn't have like IB for most of the time that I was there. Like they kind of transitioned into IB while I was there, and so because of the track that I was on, there were no IB classes for me to take. Basically all the AP classes that I could take I took, except for AP Lit because I'm a bio major, and so I didn't want to take another literature class. I feel like every high school is so specific that it doesn't really matter what classes exactly I took in high school, but it kind of makes sense for people who are, you know, gonna go into like an Ivy League school to start off like freshman year not taking honors classes, but then decide to take like more and more harder classes throughout high school. Like that, you know, looks better than if you were to take a bunch of APs at the start of your freshman year and then like not take any, you know, high level classes at any other point in your high school career. Basically just either stay at a level that you're comfortable at, or, you know, increase the difficulty of your classes. But if you like, you know, were taking AP classes and then your junior and senior year you're like, oh no, I'm just gonna, you know, take it easy and take a bunch of regular classes instead of, you know, high level classes, you know, that doesn't look too great to the admissions people. Even though I took like the hardest classes available, I got all A's and A pluses. We didn't have A minuses at my school, and our grading scale was that an A is a 93%, so if you get 93% or above you get an A, and then an A plus was 98% and above. And my GPA was a 4.37, which was out of a 4.5 scale. And also my high school was kind of known for being like academically rigorous, you know, people having emotional breakdowns over the workload and stuff. When I visited colleges, a lot of them were just like, we want to see extracurricular activities, but testing shouldn't be an extracurricular activity. Basically, I took the SAT and the ACT each one time, and I scored a 1460 on the SAT, and that was a 740 on reading and writing, and a 720 on math, and then I got a 34 on the ACT. And I took the ACT with the writing portion, and I got an 8 on the writing portion there. I took the SAT at school, like at my high school, because they offered the SAT, and so it didn't have like the writing part to it, but the ACT, I did take the ACT with writing. I didn't get perfect scores. I mean, I did well, but I didn't get perfect scores on either of them, but, you know, I didn't keep taking it over and over and over trying to get a perfect score. I just like kept the good scores. Like taking it one time and getting a good score looks better than taking it 6 times and getting a perfect score, if that makes sense. I was also a National Merit Scholarship finalist because of my score on the PSAT, which I took junior year, but I don't remember what the score was. As far as extracurriculars go, this was like kind of a long story for me. Basically, when I visited colleges, most of them were saying like, we want to see commitment to 1 or 2 clubs like for all 4 years, or at least for a good chunk of time, maybe like the last 3 years or something. You know, don't want to see people joining a bunch of clubs all at the same time just to be in clubs. Like, it's better to have just 1 or 2 clubs that you're like really dedicated to, or even better, have like a club or 2 that, you know, you are dedicated to, and then over time you start, you know, working your way up, and later in high school you have like a leadership role in the club. But for me, my high school, our like culture around clubs was really weird. Like the clubs either like pretty much never met, or if they did meet, it was only like 2 people at a time because they never said anything about meeting. Clubs just generally like weren't on top of it. They didn't make that much of an effort to like try to get people to join them, and then once people did join them, they didn't really like make too much of an effort to put out information about their meetings and stuff. So it was just kind of like, does this club even exist or not? And so yeah, I also didn't go to a very big school, which was probably part of why clubs weren't really that big of a thing, because people hung out with their friends just in general. Like people didn't like go to clubs for like their social life. I joined a few clubs like freshman year, and then by sophomore year they were all like not clubs anymore, and so I just like didn't have any clubs for like a couple of years. And then junior year I like joined a couple more clubs, and one of them never had any meetings or never sent out emails or information about their meetings. So I really only was like actually dedicated to like one club for the last 2 years of high school, because I had so much difficulty getting into a club and staying in a club. But other than that, I was in my school's club for like students who were like advanced academically. I don't know. Basically what happened was we met once a month during lunch, and then they like did like a PowerPoint. They give us information about like opportunities outside of school and stuff, and I actually stayed in that one all 4 years because students weren't like in charge of it. It was just kind of like this one teacher who was in charge of it, and she like ran the club and scheduled all the meetings and sent out all the emails and like organized everything for everybody and like reached out to people, and that's what it took to get a club to stay together at my school. I did also have a volunteering job for the first 3 years of school, and then I needed to quit that job because my school required volunteer work for a certain like graduation requirement, and the place that I was volunteering at didn't qualify, so I had to quit my volunteer job to work somewhere else, so I didn't have that commitment either. And so it was just like my school just like really would not let me be committed to one thing for all 4 years of high school. It just didn't work out. So I had a lot of difficulty with that, and I felt like that was like a really big knock on my application. Like it just did not look good to not have any clubs or extracurriculars. I felt like it just made me look super flaky. It looks like I didn't try to be in clubs, or I wasn't dedicated to my clubs or my volunteer work or whatever else. Like I just really had a lot of like weird situations that came up. And then like even in college, like last year I missed the club fair, and then I tried to join a couple of clubs, and then one of them almost took $400 from me, and one of them I just like wasn't feeling a connection there, and so I ended up with 0 clubs again. Love that for myself. Moving on to letters of recommendation. Basically, it happened like through my school. Like our guidance department had like handled that, where basically we wrote down which 2 teachers we wanted recommendations from. We gave it to the guidance department. They sorted it out, made sure that no teacher had like too many to handle, and then gave us these forms, and they were like, you gotta hand this to your teacher that you want to write the letter for you, and then the teachers would write us the letter of recommendation. I had a situation where, because I'm like a bio major, I also want a minor in art. Because I am super involved in art, I got a recommendation letter from my art teacher, and then I visited a bunch of colleges, and they were like, oh, you need 2 teacher recommendations from core subjects, which does not include art. So I had to like hurry up and like go back to like my guidance counselor and be like, can I please have a 3rd teacher recommendation? And then I got one from another teacher that I felt comfortable with writing my letter of recommendation. Also my college counselor recommendation, she made us all fill out like a form with like a bunch of information about ourselves so that she would be able to write an accurate recommendation letter. And she also had a section on that where basically she was like, anything else you want me to add. And so basically I asked her to, you know, include something about how I've had just like really bad luck with clubs, but even though my extracurriculars don't look so good, I still was like dedicated to doing things outside of school. And then also, so basically you will probably have to waive your right to view the letters, but my advice would be, if you have a situation like mine, don't be afraid to like tell either one of your teachers or your counselor like, hey, can you like throw in something about this for me? Because you can kind of like try to make it seem better than it is. You know, don't be afraid to like reach out to your recommendation writers. I feel like another big part of the application process is the essay. So Basically, we wrote our college essay like over the summer between junior and senior year. That was like our summer homework. And mine was like, I just like wrote about an experience that I had, and my teacher was basically like, this is boring. And so I changed it completely. I like scrapped it and wrote about something completely different. So my essay was, I took the prompt that was like, write about something that you learned about yourself. Whatever that one is, that's the one I chose. And it was generally just like how I feel conflicted because I've never like had a single thing that I've been super passionate about. Like, I feel like there's a lot of people out there that are like, ever since I was a little kid, I always wanted to be a doctor, or I always wanted to be a lawyer, or I always wanted to be an astronaut, and so I'm gonna, do everything that I can to achieve that goal. But I never had anything like that. I was always just like, I don't know, I'm a 6th grader and that's what I'm doing. You know what I mean? Like, I never had any particular career goal in mind. I never had like a dream job. I always like felt like I didn't really have a direction to go in. I was just sort of like going with the flow, and I never really had like a career in mind. But instead I have a bunch of like different skills in many different areas. So like, I'm a bio major now, but like I'm also really good at math, and I was like really good at writing, and I'm also an artist. And so like I have all of these different skills, and I never really had any like clear major strength. You know what I mean? Like, there's some people that always excel in this one area, but like that was never me. And so I basically wrote about how I realized that it's actually a strength because I'm able to, look at things from different perspectives and apply knowledge from different like disciplines and stuff. That was basically like the gist of it. And then I like used some examples and stuff, and then I also had like the interview portion. I think it's like required, but like if you don't have an alumni to interview you in your area, then they waive that requirement. But I did have an alumni interview, and I sort of explained the same thing again, like in my interview, how like I have a lot of different strengths. Basically, in my interview, I related it back to like Cornell's "Any Person, Any Study" motto, and how like I really liked the idea of being able to find a class in just about anything, because I do have so many different like diverse interests. That was sort of like one of the reasons I actually chose Cornell when it came down to choosing. It was that, and also like the campus. I applied regular decision, and I applied a couple of days before the deadline, and I also submitted my application like in the middle of the afternoon, because on the night of like various deadlines, the Common App website was always like down or really slow. So I would recommend, submitting your application in like the afternoon or the morning or something like that. Just not like 11:30 p.m. because the website will be down and then you're going to be panicking. So just a note there. They notified me about my acceptance in the mail like about a month, I think, ish, before the decisions were released online. I don't know why they decided to let me know early. I didn't apply early, I applied regular. So I don't know why they like sent me a letter early on, but they did. After I found out that I got accepted, I then went to the Accepted Students Day, and I ended up actually really liking the campus, because the first time I visited, it was actually the last school that I visited out of like 17, and they were all just like blending together at that point. And also the first time I was like walking around in the rain for the tour, and I was not having a good time. But the second time I visited, there was like really nice weather, and I saw the waterfall, and it was pretty, and so I just like had a nice time being there instead of suffering like I did the first time. Since getting accepted, I have suffered outside in the weather several times, but generally it is a very nice campus. And then at the very end, I was sort of like deciding between Cornell and Johns Hopkins, which was one of the other schools that I got accepted to. And they both had like a bio major and stuff, but basically the decision mostly came down to like downtown Baltimore or the mountains, and so I chose the mountains, which is why I'm here. So yeah, that's my story of how I got here. Thanks for watching. How much would it suck if this video was just like, my family's been going here for 6 generations,